Hi folks, excuse me. Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, the international NGO, the USaid. It's been exposed, massive fraud, corruption, slush fund distribution, under the table payments. I mean, fraud and corruption on a scale that I don't think anyone could have imagined. And that such is the power that the globalists have to corrupt and subvert Western society. And they're doing it with our money, for goodness sakes. Money they've looted and stolen from us in order to destroy us. Consider that for a moment, if you would. Nonetheless, there are the two people I know. I mean, this is so far. I know quite a few people that seem to be very well to do, very well off. I mean, rich, I suppose, is a subjective term, but they're doing pretty good. We're talking, living in the the most expensive postcodes in Australia that are 99% white, by the way, and constantly talking about how wonderful globalization is. Oh, mass migration is fantastic. Of course, they don't need to put up with any of the fallout and any of the degradation of living standards that other people have to. They're not tied to a fixed salary where they see costs of everything going up around them. These are people that have salaries that more than match, in fact, go well ahead of any inflationary pressures, whether those pressures be in real estate or whatever they might be, energy, food, and so on. So they're immune from the effects of it that other people have to suffer. Now, one guy, I never really asked where his money came from. It's not my business, but his real estate portfolio is about $12 million, and he's got a prime beachfront property in an outer suburb. Sort of around the $5 million type range. And he's got maybe $300,000 to $350,000 worth of motor vehicles in his driveway. He goes on, as many others do, by the way. He's not particularly unique in this level of expenditure amongst the people I'm aware of, anyway. He'll just, without blinking, drop $100,000 on an international vacation, and he'll have 2, 3, or even 4 of those in a 12-month period. So now, in order to sustain the lifestyle that he had, I just assumed he'd inherited a lot of money or something like that. But he's not that bright, this guy, and I wouldn't rate him as industrious. Whatever money he got, he certainly didn't work to get it. Now, I assumed his income would be easily $1 million a year in order to sustain the sort of lifestyle that he has. The yacht parked in Sydney Harbour, or moored rather in Sydney Harbour. But anyway, when the NGO funding started to be cut off by the incoming Trump administration, he suddenly, around that time, not that I knew it, but around that time, he became rather somber and long-faced and dejected and disappointed. What was he going to do, and so on. Now, it appears that he and his wife both were running NGOs, and these NGOs were transnational, and he was responsible or involved in or had a hand in spreading lots of anti-Trump propaganda and pro-mass migration. He was a globalist stooge. He was a globalist stooge and flunky, and he was being gifted all sorts of things like a seat on the board or on an NGO, and he was on the advisory committee of another NGO and all this sort of thing. So I realized that just in the most recent interaction I had with him, that really his whole lifestyle was being funded by these being paid for by these slush fund corrupt fraudulent NGOs. I mean, he actually didn't have a real job. He was just being paid to spread and foment and push globalist propaganda. I mean, that's really what he was there for. And she was there. She was to spread globalist and anti-Trump sentiments around the arts and the sorts of things where women go, she's there to push the propaganda around there and has a bunch of activists that she controls and this sort of thing. And so they weren't doing any real work. They weren't building or creating anything or developing anything. They weren't innovating, nothing at all. They were parasitic in the extreme, but living a lifestyle that hitherto only either born into wealth or something, hitherto only the most productive people could dream of such a lifestyle. So we're talking the primary residence. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a mansion, but we're talking panoramic water views and infinity swimming pools, jacuzzis, steam and sauna rooms, and the whole nine yards. It's an impressive. Again, I'd stop short of palatial, but certainly an impressive residence, and again in one of the wealthiest postcodes of Australia, and one where other than rich Chinese Communist Party generals or people mowing the lawns, you don't see anyone who isn't white there. So 99% white neighbourhood. Now that's him. So, but from what I can determine, he's been able to, the globalists are looking after him. So he's been given directorships for a number of quangos, and he's to be appointed as an advisory consultant, this sort of thing. So they, within days, within a week at most, they'd replaced all of his lost income by spreading. And so he's now got, several consulting director type jobs for government quangos that are paid for by the Australian taxpayer, or grants that are provided from the United Nations or something like that. So again, he's just been able to and his wife. I don't know about his wife though. I'm not sure she got all her stuff rearranged, or at least not yet. But he's had all his income replaced, and his spirits have improved. He's now re-established his line of corrupt and fraudulent income, and so he's now happy again. But that gives you an idea as to. I had no idea that was so. This USaid thing, the amount of people that I know that probably were, their lifestyles, elegant lifestyles no less, were dependent on this fraudulent, corrupt money streaming into their pockets. And I didn't know the net, and I didn't know it was just the tentacles went that wide and that far, but clearly they do. And there's one other one, again, we're talking one of the richest postcodes in Australia, 99% white, the people that staunchly advocate for mass migration and diversity is our strength, even though they live in a place where there's no diversity. These people have got a beautiful house. It's done in the old sandstone style, magnificent swimming pool and barbecue area, and really it's an ideal. I mean, it's a picture postcard looking place, and worth gazillions. And he was going to get a job as some sort of a legal consultant in some international legal sort of observer, a body that was supposed to be concerned with legal issues worldwide, human rights and the rights of black lesbians, all this sort of stuff. He was getting some gig there, and that's apparently not going to happen now, and because the money's all dried up. So this again was something that was coming from USaid and being paid through the NGO network. She was also involved in an NGO that was again wanting to subvert Western society through the arts. In this case, things like pottery and shit like that. It looks like that's for. So again, she was being paid. But so these again aren't people that are producing or creating anything. They're paid to subvert Western society, and Western taxpayers are looted. And these people are rich. I mean, they'll never have to. None of them. They might just drain their lifestyles a bit, but if all the money got cut off tomorrow, they would still live, an elegant, top tier, top 1% lifestyle. Even if the money got cut off, now they'd have to restrain their 6-star international traveling habits and and they'd have to stop buying their $1,000 bottles of wine. And they would have to have some sort of restraints, but other than that, they'll live luxuriously for the rest of their lives. But instead, money just comes pouring in the door again, all of it illicit. Now, I've said this many times, but if I go onto any of the major online job boards, internet job boards in Australia, and I look at the best paid and often the most prestigious jobs in the country, they're not in the private sector. They're not the owner of the manufacturing company, or the manufacturing manager, or the guy in charge of factory production. None of those jobs pay that well. They pay quite ordinarily. But the best paid jobs are CEOs and executives in NGOs, or government jobs, or special consulting jobs, where someone that advises a regional governor on gay, lesbian, black lesbian issues, for example, will be paid something like 5 times, 6 times the average wage. They'll be paid more than the chief engineer on a major public works project. They'll be paid more than the most senior manufacturing manager in the country, and so on. So the jobs that are the best paid jobs are globalist jobs. They're ideological jobs. They're not jobs where you make, create, build anything. They're purely parasitic in every conceivable way and in every definition. And they're the best paid jobs, the most prestigious jobs in Australia. Looking at the best paid jobs, for most of the time, at best 20% of the jobs will be in the private sector. This is the best paid jobs in the country. Government jobs, Quango jobs, NGO jobs, they're now the best paid jobs. And there was a time, I remember looking, when I was sort of a kid coming through college and so on, looking at the public service. Some of the people I knew went to work for the public service, and they did quite well out of it, some of them. But the pay rate of a public servant, so say for every $100 someone in the private sector would make, in a somewhat an approximation of the same job, you would get paid, say, 80% of that. So $80 to someone working in the public service, and something similar, a job in the private sector would pay $100. What you got in return, though, is a job for life and quite a good pension and superannuation, retirement fund type scheme. That's what you got in return. That's wholly different now. Public service jobs pay, demonstrably better, and the senior levels of the public service pay. A head of a department in the public service in Australia can get paid $700,000-800,000 a year. An equivalent job in the private sector wouldn't pay anywhere near that amount. So this is how much things have changed. And again, the NGO jobs, the Quango jobs, the government jobs, that's where the good pay and the prestige and the power is. And this is because of the effect of globalization, and the private sector doesn't pay anywhere near as well for an equivalent job. But I had no idea these two people that I know them quite well. One of them I know very well, and I had no idea that their income was the only reason they're well-to-do, because neither of them are that bright. Neither of them are particularly hardworking. The only reason they're living such luxurious lifestyles is because they were parasiting off the taxpayer and getting paid through the corrupt and fraudulent NGO slush fund system. It's crazy. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback Challenge. Thank you for listening.